Sudokara. Wow, that is the most violent set I've seen at this competition so far. All four of the lads came on stage, they wanted blood, they got it. Real motivation in their eyes, bordering on psychopathy. And we don't really see much deathcore in this competition. I thought that they really did bring a hardcore element as well, because often one criticism we have of deathcore is that you're neither hardcore nor death metal, you're just playing a heavy version of nu metal, and they certainly weren't. They've done the homework. It's clear that they respect the heritage of both of those genres. The vocalist, one of the strongest performances so far. Did you hear the technique for the squealing? Pitch perfect. Reminded me a bit of Job for a Cowboy, the way he was doing that. My only criticism with this band, even though I just said that they don't sound like a nu metal band, why would you if you're playing an extreme subgenre of metal like deathcore? I thought the riffs could have been a bit more complex. At times he was just playing the one finger power chords, the drop tuning that you would often see in Mudvayne and shit like that. And I was expecting some more alternate palm muting, chugging as we call it. Real good groove to their music. The bass player was superb. And I've heard some people say that this band would be better off with an additional guitarist. I disagree. I think that you can hear him playing the upstrokes, when there's the dropout to those really strange dissonant chords that the guitar player was fretting. I thought the bass really carried that well. The drummer really supremely motivated, wasn't he? I think at one point he almost had an argument with the bass player when he came in too early, but that just shows you how much it means to these guys. I'm really excited about this band, and there's no doubt I'll be seeing and hearing from these again. I'm so proud that in this scene we have bands of this ilk that are taking risks and really pushing things that next level. Deathcore is not new, is it? But they put an interesting take on that, and they're not forgetting the metallic hardcore roots of the genre. You're talking about bands like Despised Icon. They clearly did listen to hardcore, didn't they, as well as the slam. And there was a bit of slam, brutal death metal in that set as well. So great job, guys. I'm really excited about your future. Hi there, it's Kirk. Welcome to the ADK Rock and Metal channel. I am pleased to announce that I am interviewing the Buckinghamshire deathcore beatdown bruisers, Sudokara. Welcome to the channel, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Let's start actually with the origins of the band, because you only formed last year, or just over a year ago. So you've made great progress in that time, but inevitably there's a scarcity of information regarding your band, who you are, what the origins are. Have you played in other metal or hardcore bands in the past? Does one of you just want to give a summary for our viewers and listeners about the origins of Sudokara?
You can do if you want.
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
It started a lot through just meeting random people. So I met him last year through an old friend, and we got on quite well. And then we just started talking about music. We kept talking about how we want to do something with music. So we both did music performance at our college and stuff like that. So we both wanted to talk about how it's always been like a thing we've wanted to do for a lot of our lives. And then one day, I think it was when we went and sort of knocked loose. And afterwards, JJ came up to me and was like, I can't lie, we need to do something. Otherwise, I'm just done. We need to do something. And then we found a bassist, and then I had a friend from college who was my vocalist, or our vocalist now. And I found out he did vocals, so I thought, I'll just give him an ask. And then that's essentially just the formation of what happened.
Yeah, Knocked Loose. Wow, that must have been one hell of a show, seeing them live. I don't
Absolutely.
know if I would try. It's like when I saw you guys live, it made me realise that I'm just too old now. It's just so violent, the pit at the Hitchin Club 85 show. I mean, I turned 40 last year, and I was just stood at the side pretending not to be intimidated by people windmilling their way through. I was like, yeah, they won't come near me. I mean, people are going to respect me because I'm 40. And I was like, holy shit, I'm going to get covered in blood here. So love the adrenaline of that. It's like the band Code Orange as well, isn't it? Knocked Loose, Code Orange. I kind of put them in the same category. There's so much violent intensity and restless energy that you just get caught up in it like a monsoon, don't you? So how I said I called you a deathcore band at the beginning. How would you describe your music? You two, what would you say if you had to describe it to somebody?
So I would say we're on the heavier side of hardcore, so beatdown sort of style, because obviously we've got like the hardcore riffs, but with the deathcore vocals. So not quite deathcore yet.
Yeah, do you know, that was my feedback as well, in the video that didn't appear in the broadcast when we were reviewing your live performance. You've definitely done your homework. I noticed that. I think one of the criticisms of modern deathcore is that it's a cross between nu metal and metalcore, you know, so the people haven't gone back and discovered Cro-Mags and the metallic hardcore bands or Suffocation and the death metal bands. And music shouldn't be about that, should it? An equation where you just think, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and put all these in a cauldron. It seems quite natural what you're doing. Can I ask you, as the drummer, what's your background? You said you were in a band with the vocalist before Sudokara.
So I was in a band with the vocalist before, but I'd worked with him through like college projects and stuff because we went through education together for a little while. So my background is a lot more in the sort of punk and deathcore sort of thing. So hardcore, sort of, when JJ said, "Oh, do you want to start like a hardcore band with me?" It came very naturally to be able to sort of take the metalcore, deathcore sort of drums that I'd like gotten used to playing for the last few years, like the punk sort of drums I started out playing. Made it really easy to sort of blend them into one, in a sense, to find a sort of healthy middle.
Yeah, the production on that one single that's available, Disgust, which you released it in January this year, didn't you? Is really rough and deliberately so. Am I right in thinking you wanted to go for that violent angle? You know, there's nothing polished in this sound whatsoever, is there?
Very true.
Yeah, it's. I think that it might sound quite pretentious of me to say. Well, I don't want to sound pretentious by any means. But I'm not a massive fan of MIDI drums. Like, if you want to, like, sampler replacements are fine, triggers are fine, but if it's all completely MIDI'd, I'm not a huge fan of that because it removes the passion, like the raw energy behind the person playing the actual kit themselves.
Yeah, that's definitely a criticism, isn't it, of deathcore, which, as you said, you're not really a deathcore band, are you? You're definitely at the heavier end of hardcore, mean down tuning and like really monstrous down picking, which you can certainly hear in your debut single, Disgust. I did hear a bit of a like Slipknot angle to it as well, though. Are there any nu metal influences in your music?
I mean, personally for me, I grew up listening to a lot of Limp Bizkit, Korn, Deftones, Slipknot, that sort of vibe. And the reason I got a 7-string was because of Korn. So there's a lot of influence on my end with nu metal, for sure.
Yeah, you know, when I was this makes me sound like a twat. When I was growing up as a teenager, Korn were the biggest band in the world in rock music, never mind just in metal. And that first album is incredible, but I think this comes up a lot on the ADK channel. We're really divided about nu metal. And I always said that Korn started this genre, they did something new, and then that 1998 album, Follow the Leader, for me, was the end of it as well, because I just fucking hate that album. Yet the two that they did after that were really good again. So I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with that band. But you're right, that down-tuned influence, everyone now takes their influence from Meshuggah, don't they? Whereas Korn and Fear Factory were the ones that were influencing all the bands in the late 90s and even early 2000s. And it's good to hear that again, because I think Jonathan Davis is such a distinctive vocalist. But who are the metalheads and who are the hardcore guys in the band? Is it as simple as that there's like this dichotomy and you've all come together?
I mean, yeah, to a point. So in terms of hardcore, I'm definitely the biggest hardcore head out of the entire group. Like, obviously, I started it on the basis of wanting to do hardcore because I loved like the message, the sound, the down-tuned riffs, everything. But obviously, Will can tell me if I'm wrong about it. But I'm pretty sure they're more into like the deathcore side of things than me.
I'd say definitely me and David are. Ed, I think, is much more our basis. I think he leans much more towards the hardcore side of things, as you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and David, like I like hardcore. I love hardcore, but I'm much more a fan of the heavier side of hardcore. Like I love bands like Terror and Kublai and Despise and all that sort of stuff. But for me, it's much more the sort of Knock Loosey side of hardcore that I'm really sort of really big into when it comes to hardcore.
There are some bands, you know, when I heard you live and then I listened to that Disgust single, there's a few contemporary bands that came to mind. Some of them are deathcore, some of them are really heavy groove metal. Have you heard of that French band 1056? They did an EP, I think last year, called Downer, and it was absolutely brutal. Is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah, I love that band so much.
I thought so. Yeah. I mean, in no way did you rip them off. I mean, they're a new band themselves anyway, aren't they? But as soon as I heard it, I was like, you'd be good on stage with them. And then what's that deathcore band, American? Is it the Last 10 Seconds of Life? Have you ever heard them?
Yeah.
They're fucking brutal, aren't they? But their last album had some experimental moments as well. Do you see, you said you went to see Knock Loose and you're just like, we just want to do full on extreme metal and with a hardcore vein running through it. Even though it's early on in your career, do you see yourselves probably experimenting or opening up at any point over the next maybe 2 years, if that's even easy to predict?
Sure, there's one.
I would say so, because we've had talks about experimenting with a lot of different aspects of hardcore, deathcore, even groove metal, even some classic heavy metal sort of influences as well. So I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the evolution of metal, isn't it? That bands just keep taking sounds from things that at first are unfamiliar and then they become familiar. And yeah, that's something I've got to say I'm always in favour of. I've got a question for you about, you're obviously from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire, and there's a really strong scene centred certainly around Milton Keynes, isn't there? The Crawford Arms is the venue, isn't it, where all the bands play, and rich heritage, you've got bands like Tesseract, Fell Silent were from there, that band Tusker are from Milton Keynes, I think, as well, aren't they? Why did you decide to enter Metal to the Masses in the Hitchin, Hertfordshire heat rather than the one closer to home in Milton Keynes?
I think it might have been because we played Club 85 in Hitchin a little bit before that. I think it was a show with Good Cop and FE66, and I can't remember the other band's name.
Torpid State.
Torpid State, that's the one.
Oh yeah.
Just we really, really liked the atmosphere of that venue. We really just enjoyed playing there. It was a floor show, so we didn't play on stage that time. But it was a floor show. We just really enjoyed the energy and the people that came to that. And then, like, after our set, I can't remember who it was, but someone who works for Club 85 said, "Oh, we're doing a Metal to the Masses thing at the Bloodstock. You should apply here." And we just thought, well, we liked the venue so much, and we liked the community around the venue, people that came, people that worked there, that it just sort of made much more sense because it's more familiar to us. We know what the sort of energy is going to be like.
Yeah, I really respect that decision as well, because you're out of your comfort zone, aren't you? I mean, it's good to see that you brought a following with you as well. And I think some of the bands that have entered the competition, they're great artists, they've turned up, but they've not really bothered about getting people to attend. And unfortunately, in those heats, you could have bands that are going to go through just because they've got the biggest audience. I think you were absolutely brilliant there, and you brought so much energy. And I saw after the gig that you were taking pictures just outside, and you almost had like a crew with you. I was not roadies, but you had like an entourage. I was just so impressed. There were so many things that were unique about your performance, not just the incredibly violent, but at the same time, really respectful way that you played. Because obviously, one of your entourage got kicked in the balls by accident during the set, and you just stopped it straight away. What is your singer called? Sorry, is he called David?
Yeah, David. Yeah.
Yeah, really commanding presence. I can definitely hear the more extreme metal element, because he has that squeal technique as well, doesn't he? Which he really, I think he was so strong live. And with that, you've got to be really careful, because as ugly as that vocal approach is, if you don't get it right, you're just going to sound atrocious. And he seemed to just hit every note in that set. And even though you've been together for a year, I've noticed you played with that Essex band, Beyond Extinction. Was that your first ever show?
No, that was our first show in London. We played with them. Our first ever show was at the Phoenix in High Wycombe with the 500 and Temple on Mars, Shoot to Kill, and Omen 1, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good band, aren't they? The 500. They certainly have like a hard rock element in the choruses, but there's some really brutal late 90s, early 2000s metalcore in their riffing as well. What about that band Vermin Throne? I really like them. They're more of they're a sludge metal quintet. What was the background to your gig with them? Were you just on a multi-band bill, or did they invite you to play that gig? How did that come about?
So I used to book shows as a hobby, and I was good friends with that venue. And Firm and Throne hit me up saying that they wanted a gig, and it was going to be different because it could be outside, and we've never played an outdoor gig before, and we couldn't really get any more bands. So I was like, well, I mean, if we're free, we could jump on it because they want a headline. Because why not? That'll be good for us.
Was that, and as I say, you've only been around a year. Was that your third or fourth gig then, where you participated in that bill?
How many gigs did we play last year?
I think we played a total of 7 last year, I think.
So yeah, it probably would have been 4th or 5th.
Yeah, because you're already a tight band. But can I just address one thing that came up in the feedback at the Metal to the Masses show? Some people were saying that you benefit from a second guitarist, and I disagreed with that. What did you think of that feedback when people were saying a second guitarist would make you even heavier and fill some of the gaps between the high and low frequency parts?
So personally for me, we're writing new stuff which incorporates a lot more leads. So having a second guitarist would work because the bass isn't going to be able to fill up the rhythm as much as a second guitarist would be. But with the set that we're playing at the moment, it sounds, well, I feel like it sounds fine with just me as the primary guitarist.
Yeah, I do. I agree. I noticed you're playing some really strange chords, dissonant chords, like a lot of the down-tempo deathcore bands. What you know more than this about me. What are those chords? Have you just made them up? They sound really eerie.
So they're called dissonance or panic chords, and it's basically like there to induce like a scary, violent sort of evil sound.
Almost like a siren.
Yeah.
Yeah, like paranoia creeping up on you, isn't it? Do you use any, in the studio for this EP that's coming out, did you use any pedal effects on that just to give it added ambience?
Not really, to be honest. Only a little bit of reverb. That's what I've got on my chain, but it's not really noticeable in the final recording, but it's still there.
Yeah, so when I thought the EP was coming out on the 31st of March. Have I misread that, or is it delayed and it's now going to come out next month?
I feel like it's kind of my fault. I think it was like
shit. I've opened the can of worms. What happened?
No. It's nothing massive. It's so we were planning for that to be the release date for our HMV gig. We were really like gunning for that and hoping for it. We just didn't have the time to get it done by then, so we had to move it back a little bit. And then so I'm still in college. I'm in my last year of college, and I'm currently still until next Friday working on my final for the year.
Oh,
and
okay.
as part of that, as part of like this whole big thing of it is being able to connect it to your own musical portfolio. And I thought there's nothing better I could do than just like focus on an EP with my band. So we put that one on hold for a bit to focus on some new stuff that's coming out, in a sense, because at least to me personally, it's a much more important deadline in a sense.
Yeah, of course, I understand that. Tell me if I get this wrong. I've noticed the tagline for the EP really caught my attention philosophically. Did God create man by mistake, or is God a mistake of man? Did I get that right?
Something like that, yeah.
I that just stands out there, doesn't it? You said that obviously you like the spirit of hardcore, and you listen to Hatebreed and bands like that. It's really violent music, but a positive message of self-reliance. I get the impression that this is a lot darker though. Am I right in thinking the lyrical themes here, as existential as they are really quite bleak? Or have I misinterpreted that from your live show?
Very true. You got it spot on with that.
Yeah. We're much more of the darker lyricists, in a sense. I think it comes from the fact that we're all depressed. Other than that, no, it's much more the more sort of looking into the more not depraved side of lyricism, but that sort of direction that's what like differs us from hardcore lyrically, I'd say.
Yeah, that band, I assume you're friends with Beyond Extinction, aren't you? Because you toured with them. Sorry, you did that gig with them. I reviewed their EP this year, and they definitely have that claustrophobic sound, don't they? They're really at the apex between death metal and deathcore, where you can't even tell the difference with them. My next question, though, is why do you play hostile and aggressive music? Don't take that the wrong way. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because obviously I'm a metalhead. I always just like to ask artists why they do things. Why do you play hostile and aggressive music? Why do you need to play that form of music? What does it do for you?
You want to say this one, or should I?
For me personally, it's going to sound really weird considering how angry it is. It's sort of relaxing in a way. And like with some of the lyrics in our songs, it kind of connects us with the community as well. So even though it's very, very aggressive, it's also very like heartfelt and surrounded by a great community. So that's why I like playing that sort of music.
Yeah. I think for me personally, it's quite therapeutic for me. It's a way of being able to get out any sort of pent up emotions I might have without taking them out on me or others. So that's the worst way you can physically do it anyway. So it's a way of being able to get out like anger and stuff, like any sort of pent up aggression. You might have noticed from my live performance, I tend to look very angry when I'm playing. I stand up and I smack stuff really hard. I throw stuff around. I just sort of really get into it. And it's a therapeutic release for me to be able to get out any sort of emotions I might be having at the time.
Yeah, there was a moment in your gig at Hitchin Club 85. I think Jojo started the song too early and you were a beat behind and you looked like you were going to murder him. Where you looked at him, it's like, what are you doing? I was like, again, that's something I've not seen before. But I think because you were so psyched up as individuals, it's almost like psychopathic. Like all of you were just locked in on this one vision. It's like, we are just going to bring this and you have not got a choice. You're just going to get caught up in this fucking whirlwind, which is a great way to approach live music. But yeah, the reason I asked that question is because for me, I'm on the other side. I'm a music reviewer. I've never been in a band. I used to play guitar. But I'm the same because I'm not an aggressive person in normal life. That's not just me. So my outlet has always been like you guys, but you get to play it. Hostile, aggressive, bleak, unmelodious music. It's relaxing somehow, isn't it? You can just put on a fucking grindcore album and you feel great after it, don't you? And you're like, if I was to show this to 99% of people in the UK, they just think it was noise. And it's not, clearly, is it? What is obviously you can't give too much away about the upcoming EP. Can you just give us an insight? Do you have like a favorite song on that we should be looking out for leading up to the release?
I think for me personally, I think possibly for David as well, I don't know how JJ feels about it or Ed. I think our song Bleach, which is hopefully coming out soon, me and David had a lot of fun with that one. I had a lot of fun doing drums. I also do vocals on a lot of those tracks. And for that one, I think JJ had gone home from the studio and David looked at me and went, should we just have just an absurd amount of fun with this one? So we were going in and out of the booth, he'd go in and he just scream a line in a certain way. Like that sound, you know what sound really cool with that? If I just went in and did this as well. And it was just a more fun, it's a really fun recording process. So I think I have like a personal enjoyment of that song. And also, it's just dirty.
Yeah. Come on, your lead single's called Disgust, for God's sake. I think I should tell you need to know. It's like, we're not here to provide melody. This is not intended for the radio. If you don't like it, you can fuck off. That's the attitude I get, which is absolutely perfect. There is a local band in the Hertfordshire scene called Dead Flesh, who they do something similar as well. It's like, no, we just want to write disgusting music that's diabolical and is grotesque. Nothing wrong with that. It's art. That's where a lot of experimental music comes from. So just before we wrap up then, you've got the EP coming out. As a drummer, you're also doing your finals at sixth form, or university, sorry, is it that you're doing your finals?
College currently.
Sixth form, yeah. So what other plans have you got? Because JJ, you said you used to be a booker for local bands, or you probably still do that. So clearly you've got connections and you've got a festival coming up, haven't you, as well, at the end of this month? What else is on the horizon besides Metal to the Masses and this festival you've got coming up at the end of May?
I mean, as it currently stands, we've got a lot of content in terms of stuff we've written. We've got about, 2 EPs and half an album worth of stuff. So hopefully we can just continue playing gigs, continue working on music, releasing stuff whenever the time feels right.
What contacts have you got in the north? Because obviously you want to expand outside of Buckinghamshire, don't you, and the southeast. Have you played any shows beyond Birmingham in the northwest of England, like Manchester or Bolton or places like that?
Not currently. However, me and David, for next year, we're moving up to Nottingham for university. So we're going to keep the band going. We're going to like travel up and down. So like Ed and JJ will travel up for gigs up in Nottingham. Me and David will travel down for gigs in London and Wickham or whatnot. We'll just travel to places to meet to play gigs. So obviously going up there is going to give us like the opportunity to go and meet people who know people. So it's essentially just one September comes and me and David go to university up in Nottingham. It's just going to sort of hopefully sprawl outwards, especially because of the sort of the music scene that Knots and Chefs has up in the north.
Yeah, you've also got that. Is there a venue in Derby, which is near Nottingham, in the East Mids, called, is it the Hairy Dog?
Yeah.
They seem to put on quite a lot of decent music festivals as well, don't they? Including a lot of heavy music. What else have you got there? Yeah, because if you're in Nottingham, you could even, you've even got like Lincoln and even Peterborough. Isn't that far, is it? And then you're going into Cambridgeshire there. Yeah, what is the Sheffield scene? I'm not too familiar with that. Obviously, you've got very successful bands from there, haven't you? Like Bring Me the Horizon and what they call While She Sleeps, and that what's that UK Malevolence. They're from there, aren't they? Sheffield. But I don't really know much about the underground though. What's the main venue in Sheffield? Do you know?
Not yet. I guess we're gonna have to find out.
Yeah, because you're right. It's on the doorstep, isn't it? Nottingham, Sheffield, Chesterfield. You've even got places like Doncaster. I find the more of a deprived town it is, the heavier the scene is.
Yeah.
Although, like Hertfordshire here, it seems to be dominated by doom metal and sludge. I can't even think of one black metal band other than that. Well, there is the Meads of Asphodel, but in Buckinghamshire, which other bands should we be looking out for? I only know really Vermin Throne in your scene.
Definitely Omen 1, definitely Shoot to Kill. That's probably about it, to be honest.
Shoot to Kill, are they a hardcore band?
I don't know what I'd describe them as.
Yeah, neither, to be fair.
I just like the name. You just think that they're a hardcore band with a name like that, wouldn't you? Shoot to Kill.
Yeah, they're good lads, and they're a lot of fun to play with. And we've played shows with them in the past. They're great people. Same thing as Omen 1. They're all so lovely, and they're just doing their thing just as we are, and they're doing good at it. So just keep an eye out for them, keep supporting them. Go listen out, go check them out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be seeing you in the next heat for Metal to the Masses. Just for our viewers, let's just put it in perspective. That one you were in was phenomenal. Probably the most extreme. You had the hardcore band Broken Tooth, who are quite an established band. I really enjoyed that debut show from that band Writhe. They were playing like dissonant, down-tempo deathcore, weren't they? And even the first band, even though they were completely different to everything else, and they ended up being crushed, didn't they, by the extremity of you three bands. For the Hunters, I thought they were really energetic as well. They were more alternative rock with a bit of eye punk in, with some really strange rhythms. Who were your favourites on the night from the bands you were competing against?
For me, definitely Broken Tooth. They were incredible, dirty, heavy, basically what you want to hear.
Yeah, they really served it up, didn't they, to the crowd? Well, what about you? What did you think? Who do you want to compliment? From that night, who stood out for you amongst the bands that you were competing against? Sorry, this is directed at you. This question.
Yeah. I think they all stood out in their own ways really, really well. But I think just for like crowd energy wise, and like just the image and the stage presence of their vocalist, also just the music itself, it's just really sort of speaks to me. I think I have to agree with JJ. Broken Tooth. All the bands were phenomenal, but I think Broken Tooth were just, I don't know what it is. They just sort of clicked in my head for me.
Yeah. Hopefully you did some networking there and can probably arrange a show with them.
Fingers crossed, we'd love to.
Yeah. There's also, look out for that Cambridgeshire St. Neots based band, Own Your Life. They were in one of the heats earlier on and surprisingly didn't get through. They were incredible. That is metallic hardcore, but the drummer sounded like, he should be in Fear Factory. Really good footwork on the double kick pedal and some really interesting bolt thrower type death metal riffs, but clearly a hardcore band. The singer was wearing a Terror long sleeve. So I was like, when you're at the bar and you see someone come on stage with a Terror t-shirt, because JJ, you mentioned, was like, oh shit, this is going to be violent. But there was a lot more groove to them, so people could just spin their heads. Whereas with yours, it was just like, get out the way if you're not up for it. But yeah, I'm going to bring it to a close there then, guys. So thank you very much for joining me. I am looking forward to seeing your quarterfinal appearance in Metal to the Masses. And please make sure you notify me the exact date when the EP is coming out. We'll review it for the ADK Rock and Metal channel, and I will personally review it for Screen Blast Repeat as well. So, absolute pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.